Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on Arise News. And now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning. Let's bring in Eniola Akinkuotu. Well, you did think it was a Constance. She is not here today, so it's Eniola, the chief international correspondent of the Africa Report, who will be leading today's review. Well, Eniola, glad to have you with us today.
Good morning, Charles.
Very good morning to you.
Good morning,
and
Morning.
Okay, so thank God it's Friday.
Absolutely.
So straight to this day, our in-house newspaper, and the major story there, the lady in the eye of the storm. INEC petition for Akpoti-Uduaghan's recall failed constitutional requirements. Well, Eniola, just before we went on break, it's the story we treated, the constitutional requirement for Akpoti-Uduaghan's recall failed INEC's standard, and so she is not going to be recalled, at least not in the foreseeable future. But then those who signed the petition are still insisting that they will find the numbers. How does that work out?
Yeah, so some days ago, I actually had an interview with the former legal director of INEC, that's in person of Oluwole Osaze Uzi, who spoke about how difficult it is to recall a lawmaker. I think this is the fifth time in this Fourth Republic, and it's failed. Recall that some 5 years ago, it happened. They tried to do it to Dilo Melai, it failed. Simon Lalong, the immediate past Minister of Labour, who is currently a senator, at that time too, he was a speaker when the state of emergency was declared in Plateau State. At that time too, they tried to recall him. It also failed. You see, the conditions set by the Nigerian constitution is very, very, very difficult when it comes to recalling. First of all, you have to get enough signatures, and then after the signatures, you submit the petitions to INEC. The signatures, it has to be at least 50% plus one of the number of registered voters, and that's very, very difficult. Why? Because there is no election in Nigeria in the last 10, 15 years where you've had up to 50% turnout, voter turnout. It's usually between 30, 25%, 26% thereabout. And so you have to get that. Once you've gotten that, the requisite number of signatures, you submit to INEC. INEC will then do the verification. They'll first of all count to see if the number of petitions have met that constitutional requirement. That's just the first step. And this particular exercise failed just the first step. It couldn't even go beyond the first step. And even if I had gone beyond the first step, then you have the next procedure, which is getting, verifying the signatures. And most times that also fails. After that, you then have to also try to, do verification on the field. And then finally, you do the referendum. So it's a very long process, and it has never scaled through because it's so difficult. And I'm not surprised that it failed. But then again, the law allows them to, those who tried, to try again. You can try up to 100 times if that's possible. So we'll see how that goes.
So when they try again, because I think it falls short by 29,000 signatures. So if they decide to try again, maybe they might just be able to, if they got 208,000 and something, then probably 29,000 would be a little short of 10% of that original number. So if they now make another try using the same methods that they've been using to get the other 208,000, would it still be valid?
Well, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, first of all, the first time when they were gathering the signatures, Senator Natasha Akpoti was not around. She was not in the country. So when she got wind of what was happening, she flew back. And she was able to, rally her supporters and all that. And now that she is on the ground, it's going to be more difficult because some of the eyewitnesses there said they were induced. They were told that, look, we're having some sort of empowerment program, come and take free food and all that. on the condition that you sign and put your voter number there and all that.
Okay.
And so that was why that scaled through. That's what they said. So now they have to start that process again, and now that she's on the ground, it's going to be much more difficult to achieve that.
Speaking of her being on ground, I think it's interesting to look at how the story has unfolded over the weeks. You know, there was a lot of excitement and a lot of talk in the past days when she arrived in her home state in a chopper, and she made her comments about that and spoke about the wonderful support that she had from her constituents and from her husband and from her, you know, friends and well-wishers. And I think it's very interesting how this has turned out. Something that was meant for, you know, to really mar her reputation, is actually bringing her out in a very positive light. Charles, I don't know what you think about this, but I'm getting a very, you know, positive vibe from all of this. Like, wow, she is able to break through after all of that negative talk.
Well, apparently she is pretty much popular with her constituents.
Yes.
That is clear. Even if you say, okay, the multitude that turned out to welcome her when she visited Kogi State was probably contrived, or maybe just a reaction to her status at the moment, the way and manner in which her opponents went about acquiring those signatures shows that if they had gone through the proper channel or through honest means, they probably wouldn't get those numbers they have gotten. So it's very clear that Natasha's opponents are on the back foot, and that's why they've been trying, you know, those underhand methods, trying to secure those signatures to, facilitate her recall. Unfortunately, it's going to be a very, very difficult process now that she has returned and is on ground.
Can I add something?
Yes, of course.
You know, you see, everyone sort of loves the story of an underdog rising.
Yes.
Rising against opposition, rising against, you know, being cheated and all that. And, you know, she's still battling her suspension at the Senate. A lot of people are not happy about that. And now you see a woman. Because you just, how many women in the Senate? Just 3 or 4.
Right.
And now look at what this woman is facing. Now they indirectly making her very, very popular. She said on TV yesterday when they asked her that, you know, did you think you could win? Could you defeat the governor in a governorship election in 2027? And she said yes, she's confident that she could do it. And so she's gaining nationwide fame and popularity. And I think these are detractors need to be very, very careful. As is often said, when you kill Christ, you create a religion out of it.
Well, come to think of it,
I like that.
Someone did say her opponents, so to say, are just trying to distract her. So I guess they probably have succeeded to some extent, except that in trying to distract her, they've also attracted more like positive attention to her. Well, let's move to the next newspaper, and that's the Daily Independent. Let's bring up the Daily Independent. Very interesting headline there. Can we bring up the Daily Independent? There you go. I will sign the condolence register of those who wish me dead. That's quintessential Nyesom Wike, right, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, who has dismissed rumors that he collapsed and was flown abroad for medical treatment, describing the claim as baseless and politically motivated. Speaking in Abuja while inspecting ongoing projects in the FCT, Wike said, I don't want to give credence to people who are only interested in spreading rumors. First of all, I'm a human being, not a ghost. If someone collapses, it's a human being that collapses, not a ghost. Unfortunately, I did not collapse, and so on and so forth. But the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory has this very quaint sense of humor.
As you said earlier, it's quintessential Wike. He always likes to be at the center, you know, be the center of attraction and all that. He reminds me a lot of Trump in a way, you know, how erratic and, you know, always wanting to be in the spotlight. Wike has said so many controversial things I can't even count. he was the one who said some months ago that anybody who is supporting, any governor who is supporting Governor Fubara is going to put fire in their states. You know, so all this sort of rhetoric, that's kind of, you know, person that Wike is. So I'm not really surprised. I know he'll still say something else tomorrow again, and we'll be here discussing it. So that is Wike for you.
Interesting. Well, of course, like I said, very, very quintessential Wike there. Well, like Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, like Nyesom Wike, those are the two people in the eye of the storm at the moment, you know, for different reasons. Now over to the Tribune rather, and another personality also making waves at the moment, and none other than U.S. President Donald Trump. And the headline reads, how Trump's new tariffs will affect Nigeria. And, well, it's all about facts and figures, but apparently the shock waves are already evident after United States President Donald Trump has announced that those are sweeping tariffs across the globe. Almost every country is affected, including Nigeria. And that headline also can be found in This Day as well and other publications. And it's talking about how, you know, the tariffs are sending U.S. stocks and the dollar tumbling. And of course, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, of which Nigeria is a signatory, you know, facilitating trade between the United States and Nigeria, is also in danger. Eniola?
Yeah, I mean, the way historians are couching this entire thing is the new world disorder. By Donald Trump.
I like that.
Interesting.
You know,
I like that.
And Nigeria has benefited, you know, a lot from AGOA. Between 2000, when AGOA was signed, and now, Nigeria has exported about, I think, $277 billion worth of goods in the last 25 years. You know, and now the U.S. is imposing about 15% tariffs on Nigerian goods. But I was very shocked when I saw the document released by the U.S. government 2 days ago that Nigeria imposes 27% tariffs on U.S. goods. And so if Trump is imposing 15%, I won't call that reciprocity. I think it's just a deterrence. You know, he's trying to say, look, we also have teeth. As much as as much as we talk about how controversial Trump is, we have to also realize that to a large extent too, the U.S. has been on the receiving end of tariffs too, and I think he's trying to bring back jobs, trying to bring back manufacturing to the U.S., which they've lost mainly to China. You see those Rust Belt states, Michigan and all that, they've lost. They used to be hubs for manufacturing vehicles, and they've lost that. He's trying to bring it back. I really don't know how that's going to work because labor is very expensive in America. So if they want their goods to be competitive too, they also have to address issues of labor, which China and other Asian countries showing that they have the advantage. And so we'll see how it goes, but a lot of economists have faulted this, saying that, look, it's going to affect the U.S. economy a lot. And the U.S. has something called exorbitant privilege, which is they have the power. They're the only country in the world that has the power to print the dollar from nothing. Other countries have to earn it. The U.S. just has to print. And so that advantage, in the past, that advantage was mitigated by the gold standard. And then when Richard Nixon came, I think it was in 1971 that he changed it all, that the US dollar is only backed by the world, the confidence the world has in the US economy. Unlike in the past, when you could just take an ounce of gold and exchange it for a note, a dollar note, you know, it was measured against the dollar, the gold. Now that has changed. So the US has a lot of advantages over the world, and so that is one of the reasons why people are saying that, you know what, the world too also needs this. We also need to impose tariffs too on U.S. goods too, so that at least we can also thrive. Almost $28 billion. That's the GDP of the United States, and and the U.S. is also the largest customer in the world, the largest consumer in the world, because they have a thriving credit system. You know, so they still have the advantage. It's not as bad as Trump
Right.
is painting it, that, oh, the U.S. is dying and all that. That is not true. So I'm just hopeful that, I'm hoping that maybe things will be sorted out soon. And lastly, the World Trade Organization. I wonder what they're really doing. Because, look, I don't want to be too critical of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She's Nigerian and all that. We root for her. But we haven't seen any direction. We've not heard anything from them.
But you
because
did
now
say
the
that
whole world
the
is going
United
into a
States
tailspin.
has that financial advantage, and the World Trade Organization is probably a beneficiary of the United States' largesse. And so, I mean, why would they want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg when there is probably no alternative, no efficient and formidable alternative? Because the European Union, for instance, would have been the other direction to look. But then how do they measure up against the U.S. this time around?
They also have imposed tariffs on the, I mean, I think cars going to, U.S. cars going to the EU region, I think it's about 10% tariffs. So Trump has hit them back and they're saying they're going to retaliate. So Trump is now saying, if you retaliate, I will retaliate again.
I'm glad you mentioned about the cars, Eniola, because I have a question about that. Do you think that this idea of American-made cars is sustainable for Americans? You know, I was thinking of it throughout this whole talk. I think yesterday we had a similar headline as well. And as well with what's happening with Tesla, is this sustainable for the future?
U.S. vehicles are expensive.
Yes.
If you look, just step outside Nigeria here. I think number one is Toyota. Number one is fuel efficiency. You know, number two, its parts are cheaper.
Yes.
You look at the U.S. brands, the Fords, Chrysler, GMC, and maybe just about five thereabout with Tesla.
Yes.
They're very expensive. Teslas are very expensive. If you
Yes.
compare it with BYD, that's its contemporary, that's its competitor. And so one of the main things that makes it expensive is labor. Labor is very, very expensive in America. America is one of the few countries in the world where an artisan earns almost 6 figures.
Wow.
You hardly see that in so
Oh,
many
yes.
other parts of the world. And so I really don't know how they're going to cope. It's not only affecting America, it's also affecting places like Germany too. You see that Volkswagen, they're also having problems. They're finding it difficult to compete against China. And now they're saying that, okay, they're going to convert some of their plants to manufacturing weapons.
Yeah.
That's the only way they can stay afloat.
Well, that headline can also be found in the Punch newspaper. And let's bring up the Punch quickly. Trump's tariff threatens 10 billion naira US-Nigeria trade. And one of the writers there says Nigeria's crude revenue may plunge as US begins enforcement. Maxima raises concerns. So quickly, Eniola, its effect on Nigeria's
US has stopped
exports.
The US stopped importing crude from Nigeria. Last I checked, they stopped like 2014. In fact, it's actually Nigeria that has been importing crude now. Dangote has been importing about 12 million barrels monthly from the United States, from Texas. So I think some of the goods that we send to we export to the US will be affected definitely. But I think ultimately Nigeria too needs to reduce the tariffs it's imposed on US goods. What I saw is 27%. That's what I saw in the US document. I don't know how true it is, but I want to assume that it's factual. So we need to reduce that too. If what the US is imposing on Nigeria is 15%, so there's a disequilibrium there too. We import mostly from China. China is the biggest beneficiary in all this. And I think China is the major target, it's the primary target of Trump, not really small countries like Nigeria. I mean, the GDP of US is more than 3 times the size of the entire Africa continent.
All right, so still in the Punch, one of the top headlines are there, and I think it's almost sensationalist. At the very top right-hand corner, the former Director General of the Nigerian Youth Service Corps, NYSC, Maharazu Siga, has regained his freedom. And, you know, one of the things he did say, Hyenas nearly killed me in the kidnapper's den. Now, he didn't say that exactly, but of course, let's just say that's a clickbait. But he did say that they were actually kept in captivity, where you had hyenas and scorpions and, you know, other wild animals. Well, it's not all gloomy news now. At least we have, after almost 2 months in captivity, the former DG of the NYSC has regained his freedom?
And Siga was actually the DG of NYC when I served, 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And he used to come to our camp a lot, Katsina. I think he's actually from Katsina State.
Yes.
Yeah, so I served in Katsina, so he used to come to the camp a lot, gave us cows, to share on certain occasions, and we had excess food. So when I heard about his kidnapping, I just felt bad because, I mean, he was a very nice man and all that. But it shows that, look, no one is really untouchable. This is an ex-general. And if this is happening to an ex-general, imagine those who don't have names.
That's
people
right.
who are maybe just some poor person who nobody knows. The media doesn't carry it because nobody is reporting it. You still have, some of the Chibok girls still in captivity too.
Yes.
So I think congratulations that at least he came out unharmed. But what of the so many other people, the thousands and thousands of people who are still in captivity and who cannot afford ransom? I think the NBS said some few months ago that Nigerians paid about 2 trillion thereabouts as ransom just for last year alone. Just imagine that.
You know what's ironic about that is that earlier in the show, when we're having a break, Charles and I were talking about the importance of security and making your life secure by yourself and doing all that you can, to ensure that you are protected. Charles, I see you taking a deep breath there. Do you want to touch on a bit of what we spoke about?
Those things we said off camera, if we discuss them on camera, we will be arrested. But let me just summarize that in a country where your own personal security is not guaranteed,
yes.
and I did mention the fact that when a so-called VIP is traveling, he has a battery of armed security personnel pulled off their regular beats to escort one person on a trip, especially, to those areas considered volatile. And then you are on your own. So imagine I have to come to work as early as 4:30 a.m. and then I am standing by the roadside waiting for a taxi. I don't know what's going to happen to me. So I have to find a way of making sure that I am adequately protected.
True.
Well, quickly, let's, time is almost up, so we go to The Guardian now, and most of the headlines there we have already discussed. The petitioners adamant on Natasha's recall as INEC holds a process. We don't know how that's going to pan out. U.S. reciprocal tariffs cause tear as WTO warns of trade contraction. And of course, the headline there, how vandalism, scavenging, ruin critical assets, damage the economy. Quickly, let's take a look at that particular headline. We had in Abuja where the covers of manholes were being removed
yes.
by scavengers.
Yes.
And then there you have that picture on the front page where, vandals are actually, sawing through rail lines, rail infrastructure.
I was driving down here, I almost drove into one of those manholes. This one that
Me
has
too,
been
I've almost
exposed
driven into them
morning.
as well, yes.
I understand that the FCT, for instance, where we are, they started investigating and they went to some of the scrap markets, they made some arrests, but I think now these guys have started again. And it's not just about manholes, you look at pipeline vandals
yes.
too and all that.
Yes.
Last year the NSC was saying Nigeria loses about 400,000 barrels
yes.
daily. So
electricity
I think
lines.
there's a problem of, we have a vandalism culture in Nigeria. Because you travel to so many developed countries, you realize that so many of this public infrastructure, they are not even manned, they are not protected. People just have a sense of, duty that, look, we're going to protect public infrastructure. I really wish we could imbibe that culture in Nigeria.
Well, I would have taken a look at the international headlines, but I think the major thing that has been expressed there, we have discussed here, that's Donald Trump's tariffs. So we'll have to let that go. Thanks so much, Eniola, for joining us on today's review. And that's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.
Goodbye.